Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, we have William from Pike County, Missouri, and he wanted to share his Bigfoot encounters and experiences that took place several years ago. William has also heard about people who live around his area near the Mississippi River who have had Bigfoot encounters in the past as well. I have been researching these creatures for quite some time now, and I hear about the Mississippi River over and over, whether it's on the Missouri side or the Illinois side, so I'm sure it is one of the main waterways these creatures use to navigate. If you guys can, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if you have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter that you would like to share here on Sasquatch Theory, please get in touch with me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, let's dive into our next Bigfoot encounter from the Show Me State of Missouri. Alright, William, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thank you so much for asking. William, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
So I live in northeastern Missouri in Pike County. I grew up in the suburb of St. Louis. The place that I live, where we've had a lot of our encounters, has been in my family for quite some time, and my family's actually been on the property going back over 100 years in all. And I'm just somebody, when I was younger, in college, 19 years old, I had run across one of these, and I heard about them all my life. And it's kind of one of those things, you hear the stories, you see the TV shows, you see them on TV, you read books, but nothing prepares you for like actually coming face to face with one, and actually having encounters with them more than once. But that first time, it's definitely a little different. So where I live, it's like I said, it's Pike County, Missouri. I'm about maybe a 10-15 minute drive from the Mississippi River. We've got a large creek that runs through our property. We've got a couple hundred acres. There's a good sized cave. We've got a couple of lakes on us, and Bowling Green Lake, which is the reservoir for the town that I'm closest to. It's as crow flies, it's maybe only 4 or 5 miles. It's not that far away. And the reason I'm stating that is because we do have, from research I've done, there have been a lot of sightings around Bowling Green Lakes as well. But, my dad grew up real close to this farm. My granddad, my dad, probably even my great-granddad. I don't know, for sure on him, but they would, they hunted, they trapped, they fished, and this was one of the properties that they would hunt and trap and fish on. My dad bought the property in the 60s sometime, and we grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis, but it was about an hour away. And every weekend growing up, we would come up and go camping. We had a little camper up there, and I'd spend the weekends with my granddad that lived just real close. But we spend all kinds of time, 70s, 80s, just wandering around the creeks as kids did back then. And my granddad would occasionally mention about stuff in the woods and kind of hint at it. My parents would talk about these things. My brother had an encounter, and that's the first encounter. I guess it's not the first that I'd ever heard of. That was the second. My dad was an elementary school principal, and he would bring his 5th grade class every year up for a week of camping, which, when I was growing up, all the schools did it. It was pretty common. And there was one, I don't know the year, I just remember them talking about that they had 3 boys that had snuck out in the middle of the night. They went down to the creek and were playing in the creek, and came running back screaming. And they had said there was a monster that they were playing in the creek, and a monster walked up on them. And my parents, the one thing they had said that they knew they had seen something is of the 3 kids, one had a broken leg and his foot was in a cast, and he was outrunning the other 2 boys. And something's got to scare you if you're doing that. Fast forward back into when I was in middle school. My older brother would have been in high school, and he had a couple of his buddies with him. We were all up there camping one night, and this would have been probably like 81, 82. And my brother and his friends, they went to another part of the farm to camp to not be around the parents. And midnight, 1 o'clock, whenever it was, woke up, and nature was calling. So I stepped outside the tent, and they were all sleeping around our campfire. No sleeping bags, no gear, anything. Excuse me. They were all just kind of on the ground around it. And same thing. They said something came into their campsite in the middle of the night, and they left. And they described it. It was large, on 2 legs. They said it's the Momo, which is what it's called in the area that I'm at. This is, again, I'm in junior high. I'm maybe, I don't know, 11, 12, something like that. But in the when I got into high school, me and my friends, big on camping, big on outdoors, and we would go up there all the time and camp, like probably, I'd say 2 days, 3 days a week, unless we had school the next day. We'd be up there, even in the wintertime, like winter break, we'd be up there. It'd be 5 below with snow on the ground, and we'd be sleeping in the back of our trucks or in a tent. And was up there one time. I had a whole bunch of guys with me. We were riding 4-wheelers around. I go to the back of the farm, and I've always got my dog with me. I see what I think is my dog kind of up on this little like hill, like ridge area. And then all of a sudden my dog comes running from behind me to catch up. And I look, whatever this thing was, it wasn't up on a hill or a ridge. It was standing up, but it would have been, I'd say a good 7, 8 foot tall, but it was on the same level ground as me. It was not up on this hillside. And, it was late. We'd been up, we'd been partying. So I'm like, I'm just seeing something, I'm just going to go back and chill by the campfire. Didn't think much of it. A little while later, I don't know, couple months, I guess it would have been several months later, but around the same year, I go up there with a friend of mine, and we're driving up. We got the hour drive. We got everything in the Jeep. It's got a storm coming in, and as we're driving in, there's it's like there's a weird energy out there. I mean, the animals seen driving up were like all stirred up. We had a deer. We drove. The road goes right next to a cornfield, and this deer flies out of the cornfield, almost lands on the hood of my Jeep, like that close. And just in general, like everything was just kind of had a weird vibe to it that going up there. But there was a storm coming in. We were going to get up, get a campfire going, get our tents, all our gear up. And when the storm hit, we just kind of waited out, and we'd have, a good weekend to do whatever. We get to the campgrounds, we unload the Jeep. My buddy starts setting the tent and, getting our coolers out, getting everything set up. I go to hop on my 4-wheeler, and I go to the back part of the farm to grab firewood. I mean, we've got wooded areas. There's like down trees and stuff everywhere. And, we just cut on them here and there. And when we need wood, we go back and get it. And I'm driving back. I'm driving along the creek, and there's a bend in this creek. And the creek is about an 8-foot drop off from where I'm at, 8 foot, like straight down. And as I get to the bend in the creek, I look over, and there it is. It is squatting. It's on 2 legs. It's squatting down like a man would squat down, covered in hair. It's in the creek. I've often wondered what it was doing, if it was getting a drink, if it was trying to catch, crawfish or minnows or some kind of some kind of food. And it turns its head and makes eye contact, like just, we're making eye contact for what seemed like an eternity. It could have been a second, 2 seconds. It could have been an hour. I mean, it just like time just stopped. I was froze. I could not move whatsoever. And then it just turns its head, looks straight forward. From squatting, it jumps 8 foot up onto the same level ground where I'm at, but up ahead a little ways, and it takes off on 2 legs. And about that point, I got, control of myself. I was kind of frozen where I couldn't move before, and I turned 4-wheeler around. I went back to the campgrounds, kind of sat down. Took me a little bit to calm down because it was a little bit on the traumatic side. I get calmed down. I start telling my buddy, what I saw back there, and so he knows I'm shaken up. He knows there's something there, and I had a couple of firearms in my Jeep, a Ruger 1022 and a little pump action 12 gauge Mossberg shotgun. So we each grabbed a gun and some flashlights, and we started going down where it ran off, because where it ran off is a path that goes right back down to the creek. And we start going through the creek, and we're seeing some of the little sandbars. We did, see some footprints, and we're tracking down the creek. Flashlights back then weren't like they are now. They put out decent light, but they didn't put out great light. And the sun's starting to go down, the storm's starting to come in, and there's just like overhanging shadows everywhere, to where we got the flashlights. We're kind of using. It's getting twilight where we're trying to see, and I just got like a really, really bad feeling, kind of like, like something might be waiting out there. And I said something, to my buddy. I'm like, hey, if something wanted to ambush us, they could do it here. I mean, it'd be the perfect scenario. They could be leading us down the creek and be waiting. And he's like, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So we turned around, we went back, we left everything there. I got my dog, threw the firearms, and not much else in the Jeep. And we just turned around and went home. We came back the next day. Storm had come through, and the creek went from, being maybe ankle to knee high to being, some parts 5, 6, 7 foot deep from flash flooding, which, is common in this part of the country. We were hoping to get some plaster cast, but that kind of, ruined us on that. But we, it was like, I don't know, just really got an interest in it and became almost an obsession at that point after seeing it, because, there are books out there, but you go to the library, you find these books, and most of the books are talking about the Pacific Northwest or Australia or the Himalayas. They're not talking about, middle Missouri. And so I started looking into it. It was before the internet. As the internet came out, that was one thing that kind of became an obsession. And, I would kind of ask around, but back then, people just kind of make fun of you. So, I didn't go too extreme with it. And I talked to some other people I knew around, and one girl that I knew that I went to high school with, and she had actually moved up to the area. She was telling me they were at a party one of the houses on my road had, And a couple of kids had gone off into the woods and came back and said that there was a big monster. They referred to it as Momo 2, came up on them, and they came running back screaming, and everyone just laughed at them, so they dropped it. And she's like, yeah, that happens occasionally at parties. So it's like I'm not the only person, that's seen it and seen it in that area too at the same time frame. Now, I'd go up there over the years, and when we'd have sightings, and this is a typical pattern, we'll have them for a little while, and then a couple of months might go by, a couple of years might go by, and there's nothing. And then all of a sudden, we start seeing activity again. It's like they migrate and move around, but then they'll come back. And I'd be up there. We had some fruit orchards that I would take care of for my parents. And I'd go up and I'd mow paths down for us on the four-wheelers and for hiking and when we're up there. So I was up there on the tractor quite a bit. There was one time when I started taking over doing the brush hogging, we had bought a Cub Cadet tractor. They were making these little compact 30 horsepower tractors that would pull a 5-foot brush mower. And we bought one of those. I was using that to keep paths brush hog. And we had a little barn in there. And I'd leave it in the barn, keep it under cover. Sliding doors were shut and latched. There was a walk-in door, like, regular door would be, doorknob. And I didn't lock it, but I shut it. Because the farm's kind of way back. Wasn't really worried about, people stealing back then. Next time I come up, something had come in the door, like had opened the walk-in door, used the doorknob, came in the barn, didn't mess with four-wheelers, didn't mess with chainsaws, tools, didn't mess with anything, didn't steal anything. But the front of my tractor was just beat to hell. Like somebody took a 2x4 or a baseball bat and just started wailing on the front of this tractor, which was fiberglass. So it was just like demolished on the front end. And, that's one thing. It had to be something that could use would have hands, would use a doorknob, and whatever was beating on it, I can't see a neighbor walking, all this way. This is a good, mile and a half to get to this barn, probably about a mile. So I can't see somebody, jumping the gate, walking all that way just to bash up my tractor and do nothing else. And it's when I started, cleaning up, keeping the farm up. So I'm wondering if maybe I pissed something off that, didn't like me up there doing that. But, I'd be up there working in the orchards. There'd be a lot of times I would just get this feeling like I'm being watched. And usually when, that would happen, it'd be just me and my dog. I'd have my truck up there. I'd have a four-wheeler, and I'd have jugs of water to water everything. And I'd get the feeling, and it's like when, like all the hair on the back of your neck would stand up. And the split second that I would get this, my dog would just turn around and stare into the woods and start growling. And the ridge on her back, all her hackles would all pop up at that same time. And she would, this was a big dog. She was a tough dog that normally, if it was something like that, she would charge. But she did exactly the opposite. She would back up, and her back legs would be pretty much on the front of my legs. She would back right up to me and growl staring in there, but she wouldn't take off. I don't know if she was trying to protect me, if she was backing up because she wanted me to protect her, or what. But I've never seen this dog back down from anything before, and this was more than one time that this had happened while we were up there working. There was another time that I was brush hogging. We would brush hog certain fields that we weren't using for crops or hay or anything. I would go and brush hog the whole field down once a year to keep thorn trees and stuff from growing. And I was brush hogging it one time, and I found a calf leg that, like, it had been ripped off a baby cow. That was a black calf leg. None of the neighbors had black Angus. They had different breeds of cattle, which would have been brown or white. Nobody was missing a calf. I checked with the farmers around. Nobody was missing a calf at all, which, you know, that's money. If you got calves, you live on a farm, you know, you protect them and you keep inventory. Nobody knew of any missing. So where it came from, how it got there, and why it was just the back leg, you know, is, you know, kind of one of the weird things that had happened. I was up with my wife and my daughter. My daughter was 2 years old. It was Father's Day, and we had not been camping the year before since my daughter had been born. And me and my wife liked to camp. We would always, you know, we did a lot of camping. We were excited about going out camping, taking her on her first camping trip. We get up there, we set up our camp. I had been working the day before, and I had gotten a chainsaw stuck in a tree up by one of our lakes, and it was getting dark. I just left it. I'm like, we'll be up here tomorrow. I'll come up with another saw and kind of release the tension, get it out of there. So I went up, I got my saw out. I'm coming down the hill on my ATV. It was a Kawasaki Bayou 220. So not a loud one, but enough that I'm going half throttle on this thing coming down the hill. And I just hear this god awful, blood curdling scream coming from the back part of the farm. It was just, it just like gave you the chills, gave you the creeps. And I get back to the campgrounds. My wife was in my truck. She had my rifle. After the first time, you know, seeing this thing, I really didn't have a desire to go out and try to hunt it or try to kill it, but I started bringing heavier firepower whenever I was at the farm, especially if it was just me. And I had bought a AK-47 shortly after that and always kept it in my truck. Well, she had this AK-47 out of the truck. She had the magazine out. She had the ammunition out. She was trying to figure out how to load it after hearing this thing scream, and she was shook up too. You know, we kind of settled down. We decided, you know, we really wanted to camp, and we were gonna spend the night out there. And we've got a real nice campsite. There's some big, huge trees, but for the most part, it's just kind of an open field, maybe about an acre. And I had 3 Coleman lanterns that I would put on tripods on the perimeter of the campsite so we could see the entire campsite. If anything ever came in, if we needed anything, the lanterns were there. And then when we'd go to bed for the night, we'd turn them off. If it was cold outside, you know, sometimes we take them in the tent for about 10 minutes ahead of time, and it would warm up the tent. But I mean, wasn't cold at this point, but that was kind of how we always did it. She goes in, she lays down with my daughter to get my daughter to sleep about maybe 9 o'clock, and she falls asleep. So I'm sitting there, I'm enjoying the campfire, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, I start hearing something moving, and it's on 2 legs. It is definitely not on 4 legs. I mean, you're in the woods enough, you can tell this thing is moving on 2 legs. And where our campgrounds are, on one side there's a cornfield, and by now the corn was pretty tall. It was, you know, probably a good 7-8 foot tall or taller. It was way up there, and something's moving through the corn, just where you can't see it, but you can hear it moving. And then the next side is a grass field, and it's got prairie grass in it. It's good size. It hadn't been mowed yet that year, so I'd say it's, you know, probably it's more than waist high, and something was moving through just out of the light where I couldn't get it in the light, but something was moving through there. And then there's a creek on the other side with about a 6-7 foot drop off, and something moved down the creek. Then there's a barn on the fourth side, and we didn't hear anything. And then we'd hear something, or I'm sorry, not we, because I was the only one up, but I heard something moving down the corn, and then down the grass, and then down the creek, then nothing, then down the corn, and it just circled our campsite for a good 20 minutes. And then it moved off, and there was nothing else the rest of the night.
Yeah, that is terrifying. So you've had a lot of activity in this area, and it's been going on for a long time now.
Yeah, we had in 2016, my daughter was senior in high school. Her boyfriend was in college, and he came home for Valentine's Day to visit and was staying with us. And she had a puppy at the time. He went to take her puppy out it wasn't too late at night. It was maybe like 7 or 8, but at that time, where we live, it's pitch black. And he's out there. All of a sudden, he calls her phone. He's like, "Hey, come here." So she goes to the door, and he gets out the words, "I think I see Mo," and she slams the door and takes off running. And we're like, "What the hell's going on?" So we go out there, and he's coming in at this point. Well, we've got a great big yard, and at the far end of the yard, there's a small tree line, and then there's a gravel county road. Well, there was one that was behind a tree that was watching him. He was out there, and he wasn't really paying attention. And all of a sudden, the dog just kind of backs up to him, sits down, and doesn't really bark, but just kind of goes, woof, like just a real low, like woof. And he starts looking, and he sees this thing peeking out behind the tree. And he's watching it for, I don't know how long, but it was a good little bit of time. And that's when he got his phone out and, was trying to get her. Well, she was terrified, so she ran away. When she slammed the door, this thing turned around and took off running. And there used to be an old house that should have been torn down back then, but these people were renting it. There was an old rundown house with a rundown single car garage next to it and a dusk to dawn light in between. And it ran right under this dusk to dawn light where he got a perfect view of it before it ran off into a cow field. And that's just, that's just some of the activity that we've seen. I mean, we've had some more minor stuff, some stuff that, probably was, but it's, not like physically seeing them. I've talked to several people over the years that I've gotten to meet in the area that are also having sightings in this general area as well. Bowling Green Lakes, which is where the city reservoir, they have two like 40, 60 acre lakes. And one guy that I've gotten to know and talk to, he grew up there, and they were constantly having sightings there. His brother still lives there and is still seeing stuff. Had some stuff this spring, as a matter of fact, some howls from out in the woods. So that's kind of a little bit about some of what we've seen. We moved up there. I mean, I'm not scared of this. It's never tried to hurt us. We ended up building a house up there back about 17 years ago. I work on the farm. Usually it's just me and my dog when I'm out there working. I'm a veteran of the United States Navy, and I have a program where, a lot of like disabled vets that, have PTSD or have some other issues, and they just want to get out and go fishing or hiking or camping. I, kind of bring them out and help set them up and let them do that. And I've had a couple guys that are out there that have, occasionally heard like wood knocks or, heard some weird like whooping and howling type noises. The last 2 years, we've had what sounds like a wolf howling out there. And there's no wolves in Missouri. So whether, it's one moving through, whether it's something imitating a wolf, I don't know. But But yeah, that's kind of what we're dealing with here.
Okay, I appreciate you for sharing all that information. And I feel like we've spoken before on the phone because I had someone that I've contacted in the past that I wasn't sure if I talked to again, mentioned an encounter in the Bowling Green area by a lake, and he said he saw a white creature down by the creek. What did this creature that you encountered look like?
That
The one that was bent down.
that was not me, but whoever that was, I would really like to talk to them and get their information. The one that I saw, it was kind of a dark, like a reddish brown, kind of like a quarter horse kind of color. Like you got, if you're familiar with horses, kind of your reddish brown, like horse color.
Yeah. And what did the head look like? What was the shape of the head?
Uh, Shape of the head was, I mean, it kind of had that like cone shape, like a gorilla would have, like when you see, the gorillas at the zoo. But the face on it was the thing, like it was covered in hair except for the face, and the face was uh like human looking. It was, I mean, it's trying to describe it like like what you would when you see the recreations of like what cavemen would look like, or that's the best way I can think of to describe it. I mean, that's not describing it, but that's about as close as I think, as I would know how to describe it.
Yeah, and what time of year did this happen and what time of day? Do you remember?
Uh, it would have been in the spring, my first one, probably about April, May, somewhere in there. And it was, would have been on the weekend, and it was a little before dark because by the time we got back out there, it was getting twilight. The time with me and my wife, would have been Father's Day, and the first scream was earlier in the day, maybe like 2 in the afternoon. And when it came up and started circling the campground, it was in the middle of the night. My son-in-law, the one that was in our yard, that was on Valentine's Day. I believe it was 2016. And I try to get information from other people around, try to you know find if someone has something, find out about it without making it sound like I'm trying to pry. But I had talked to the gas station that I go to a lot in the morning time. I'll swing by and grab something to drink or a donut. And the lady there, I had mentioned, something about Bigfoot one time. She goes, "Oh yeah, my husband saw it." I'm like, "Really? I'd like to talk to your husband." So it took about a year to get him to talk to me. And went in. He was telling me, and what he saw was out at Bowling Green Lakes, and it was he didn't see, he heard it, and I'm pretty sure what he heard was a mountain lion. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." But then he's telling me about other ones he knows of. They'd had footprints a couple years ago in the snow up in Clarksville, Missouri. And he goes, "Oh yeah, back in about 2016, it was in February. I was driving at night with a buddy of mine, and we were going past." And he said the name of, well, where I live. It's not really a town. It's more just a dot on the map of maybe like, I think the town itself has maybe 10 residents, and I live like down a gravel road from there. But it would be right where you would turn off to go to my place. He said we were driving, and in the middle of the highway in the grass strip, there was what I thought was a big, huge pine tree, and it moved. And I told my buddy, he said, "What was up with that pine tree?" And his buddy's like, "What pine tree?" He goes, "Well, there's one in the middle of the road." And he goes, "There wasn't anything in the road." And they were argued about it, so they turned around and went back, and there was nothing there. But this was about son-in-law had seen his, and just kind of, when you start seeing one, or you get one sighting. If you ask around, we'll find stuff that's similar time, similar place all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And whenever you seen that creature down by the creek, did you see the eyes?
Yeah, I did see the eyes. They were, a lot of people talk about, red eyes. I don't know that they were really red, but it was also during the daytime. Uh, I mean, there was really no whites in the eyes. That's what really, stands out. But yeah, it looked like straight at me, like we were staring eye to eye from, I don't know, 25, 30, 40 foot away. I mean, it wasn't that far away. So I did get a decent look at the eyes, and they were hypnotic. Like when it locked eyes with me, I could not move. My whole body was frozen.
Yeah, and then the creature jumped up 8 feet and took off on two legs. How fast did the creature move?
That I couldn't tell you. I only saw maybe like one or two steps, and then it was in the brush and out of sight. But I mean, it jumped up pretty damn quick. Pardon my language. I mean, like I said, it was from a squatting position. It didn't run and get a go at it. It didn't try to climb. It was squatting, and it just jumped straight up. And like I said, this is probably about 8 foot high, and probably, I guess, about 3 or 4 foot from where it was at across the water to where, get up there where the ground is. So I mean, it was a pretty good jump. It's nothing I would ever be able to make.
Yeah. Could you hear it crashing through the woods, or was it silent whenever it took off?
No, it got up there. Where it went up to is an area that I keep brush hogged down that goes to another section of the creek. And it's an area we would go to. We would actually go down there and catch crawfish a lot. And so it jumped up. There was weeds right on the bank because I'm not comfortable getting the tractor that close to the creek bank. So there was weeds maybe about waist high where it jumped up for, a foot, 2 foot, and then it was a mowed down path with woods on the side. And it just took off down the path. So really didn't hear any crashing, but there really wasn't that much to be crashing into.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
interesting.
if that makes sense,
Yeah, it does. And how does that make you feel, knowing that you can serve the military, people trust you to protect this country, and whenever you tell them about Bigfoot, they don't believe you?
Back then it was different than it is now. I mean, times have changed, but I've spent the last 13 years in the United States Navy, either active duty or reserves. Before that, I was a law enforcement officer. I've also worked as a civilian contractor for the military before that. So, I've done a lot, and and I'll tell people, some people, they want to joke and make jokes about it, but it is what it is. I mean, before I saw it, yeah, I'm not going to say I believed in it before I saw it. I wanted to believe, but until you physically see face to face, there's still going to be that doubt in your mind. There's no doubt in my mind now.
Yeah, absolutely. And your neighbors, your surrounding neighbors, you said they had Bigfoot encounters as well?
Yeah, when I had mine, like when I was in college, one of the neighbors that's probably about a mile from where my house is now, his kids, which would be just a couple years younger than me, they would have parties occasionally, and they go up and down the county road or into the field. Shoot, they were probably some of the kids were probably trespassing on my place for all I know. But they would go off into the woods. You got your girlfriend with you, you're at a party, you kind of want to go back in the woods and be alone like kids do. And that's usually when it would happen. A couple or two couples. But yeah, couples go off into the woods, and they come running back saying they'd see, they saw something, and everyone be like, "Oh, you're just, you've been drinking too much. Here, have some more beer." You're like kids do. I mean, it's high school. We all did that. Or At least I did when I was in high school. I'm assuming everyone else did.
Yeah. And the creature that your daughter's boyfriend encountered, what did it look like?
He said it was large. It was covered in hair. It was peeking out behind a tree, which we did collect some. We did go down to the tree line and we did collect some hair samples that we had found in the bark. But he said it was large. It was covered in hair, and it ran off on two legs. Is the description I got from him.
Okay, I appreciate you for sharing all that with me. And you mentioned that the activity would take place for a few months and then disappear for a few years sometimes. Do you feel like
Yeah.
they migrate around the area, or do they go to other
I-
states and areas?
I think they migrate because one thing that I have kind of tracked is there'll be several around our area, and then when they kind of stop, I'll see like southern Iowa or Jacksonville, Illinois, which is maybe an hour drive from where I'm at. All of a sudden, they'll start seeing sightings over in those areas, and usually, like we've got creeks that run through our property. One thing that these other places I notice is they have it's all areas that have like rivers and a lot of creeks that run through.
Yeah, so these creatures want to be around water. You mentioned that the Mississippi River is nearby, Bowling Green
Right.
Lake, and there is a creek. Does the creek have running water?
Yes. Yeah, it's not deep water, but it's I mean, there's pools that I'm 5'10". There's pools that'll come up almost to my shoulders, and then there's areas of it that to knee high. We go down with my grandkids and my nieces and nephews. When I was a kid, I used to play in there, so we're in those creeks quite a bit.
Yeah, do these creeks have fish in them?
They've got minnows. Some of the pools have small bluegill that'll wash out from some of our lakes, and there's a lot of crawfish in them as well. A lot of frogs, a lot of tadpoles, a lot of crawfish.
Yeah, so there is food nearby, and I'm sure there's a lot of deer up there in that area, and
Yeah.
a lot of cattle. You mentioned that you found this calf's leg. Did it look like it was ripped off?
Yes.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I got a report not too long ago from Texas County, Missouri, and the guy was talking about how this Sasquatch picked up a calf and walked across the field, stepped over the fence, and went into the woods, and they were out there looking for that calf.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I got a farmer down.
Sheep, nothing has bothered our livestock. We've got chickens and peacocks and geese. Raccoons are the only thing we have a problem with.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, do you have any more experiences or encounters that you can think of that you'd like to mention in the podcast?
I mean, we've a couple smaller ones like here and there, but nothing really, mostly just seeing. I did have one. This was just a couple of years ago in February when I was outside. I saw, I was putting our chickens and our livestock up, and I heard I started hearing coyotes. And normally when you hear coyotes, you'll hear like one or two that'll sound off, and then often one's like to one direction, and then from another direction you'll hear a few others, and then from another direction, and they kind of like go back and forth from all different directions. Well, this was from far end across like a crop field from where I'm at, close to where our caves are. It sounded like 50, 100 or more coyotes fighting with something, and then we started hearing just these screams, like these big screams all of a sudden, and just this deep guttural scream. almost like maybe one of these things was fighting with a pack of coyotes. And I went and got my son. We went out on the deck because I'm like, you got to hear this. He's a fisheries and wildlife biologist. And when we got out, we heard what sounded like a dog, like yelping, like when a dog gets hurt or hit by a car, like a dog yelping. And it was February. I drive a lot for the Navy, doing honor guard work when I'm home. And it was kind of one of those things. I was leaving before dark and getting home after dark because, in February it gets dark at 4:00. So, doing that, it took about 2 days to get out there, but I was going to go look for like tracks or something in snow. When I got out there, I couldn't find any tracks where it sounded like it was coming from. So I started looking up on the hill on top of it. And what I found there was a tree, snow on the ground, but under this tree, something had just walked around in circles and melted all the snow, like it was pacing around this tree. There was like a deer path, like when you see a deer path through the woods, but it was about 4 or 5 foot wide, and it was through thorn trees, like these thick thorns that we get here in Missouri that are like, 3 inches long and razor sharp. It was through there. And then there was a nest made out of grass, but it wasn't the kind of grass that's there. It was like a prairie grass from a different area that something had brought in and put down.
Yeah. That sounds like something unusual for sure. And have you ever experienced anything strange on this farm as far as like orbs or anything else that is like another cryptid?
Not necessarily as another cryptid. We have seen large black cats up there occasionally. We've seen mule deer, which aren't native to this area. Like I said, we've heard a wolf howling out. And then there's one time when my daughter was in junior high, we came up with a bunch of the kids that were in her class, and it was around Halloween time, and we were having a little bonfire, and we were gonna, kind of take a little walk through the woods, through some paths we had, and try to scare them a little bit. And we were going to go do that. And as we were getting ready to leave, all of a sudden they're like, hey, what's that? And there was what looked like red eyes and like some kind of a light, like a flashlight or something, up on a hillside. And like I said, this is the middle of nowhere. People don't just wander out here and walk around. So we're, trying to figure out what it is. I took all the kids back to like where the bonfire was. I'm like, hey, you guys stay here. Let me go see what it is. And I started up, and it was gone by then. And I mean, not necessarily an orb, but there was something strange up there, like a person walking. And they were gone when I got back, so no telling what that was.
Yeah. And have you ever tried to set up trail cameras or document any of this activity?
We've set up trail cameras and never caught anything, but that's not very uncommon. I kind of, from what I've read and kind of what I've talking to other people, I think the lights that the little trigger light, the infrared that these trail cameras put out, I think their eyes could see it.
Yeah, I think so too. And what do you think these creatures are?
I mean, I've heard some people say, they're demonic, they're interdimensional. I just think it's some kind of an animal. I mean, it might be, like a missing link, like a caveman or something like that. That's just Neanderthal that just we didn't know were still around. I don't know. I think it's some kind of animal. I don't think it's anything, metaphysical or spiritual or interdimensional or anything crazy like that. I just, they find new animals all the time. I think this is one that is just out there. It's some kind of a link to humans or some kind of a link to a gorilla or some kind of primate. I don't know, but I just think it's an animal.
Yeah, that's an excellent theory, and I appreciate you for sharing that with me. I'll try to find that guy's number from Bowling Green that encountered the white Sasquatch down at the creek bottom, and I'll try to put you in contact with them if you'd like.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I would be very interested in talking with them. I've been kind of researching, looking into this kind of stuff, going back into the early 90s when I had my first encounter, and I've got like sightings I've collected from all around this area. I mean, going back, some of them are on like floppy disks, some of them are like on the 3.5, like hard disks. So I'm just all in my office, and I always like to get more. I have been kind of toying around with possibly doing starting a podcast or maybe a YouTube page, and just kind of dealing with sightings from the Midwestern area, which is the area I'm pretty much interested in.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, any extra ones I'd love to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll let you know what I can find. The creature that came into the barn and beat up the four-wheeler, or I mean, you think it's one of these things. How tore up was this four-wheeler exactly?
No, it was a tractor, not a four-wheeler.
Okay, a tractor. I thought you mentioned a Kawasaki. Oh, that's what you were riding whenever
Yeah, that's what I was riding.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was a tractor, and it was I mean, the whole front end was gone. I mean, I had to get a whole new grill and replace the front end.
Okay. Yeah, that was a tractor. And as far as the Kawasaki, you were riding it whenever you heard this blood-curdling scream that gave you chills, correct? What did the scream sound like?
Well, at that point, me and my wife had talked about it a little bit, and Matt Moneymaker, that has the BFRO, he was just starting the BFRO website at the time. I think it was moneymaker.org even. So when we first got on, we're like, hey, that's kind of a odd name, for this. But we talked to him a little bit, and he goes, yeah, I've got some audio files on my website. Go to this page, and we pulled one up, and it was a territorial male scream, and it was exactly what we heard.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're able to find audio that kind of confirmed what you heard that night.
Right.
Okay. Well, William, I think that pretty well covers your encounters and experiences with me, and I appreciate you for your willingness to talk to me openly about all of this here on Sasquatch Theory, and that really means a lot to me. And it's awesome speaking with somebody from Missouri that has encountered the same things that I have in the past.
Yeah, and like I said, they've gone on for generations where I'm at. But when I first saw them, there wasn't a lot of information out there, and where I would have loved to have heard, yeah, there's a whole bunch of them around, the part of the state and the country that I'm from. I didn't have that luxury. And, I think the more people that talk about it, at least for, the rest of us, when we see something, at least it's like, we know we're not crazy. We know they're out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And my goal is to log down as many encounters as possible, especially from the Missouri area. And I hope to hear more. I'm sure whenever people hear this podcast, they're going to chime in the comments and say, hey, I've seen something near Bowling Green or somewhere around the Mississippi, which will be really cool to hear.
If they do, definitely let me know, because I'm all ears.
Okay, for sure. And if you ever want to meet up in the future and tell your encounters on film, let me know. I'd like to meet up with you, meet you in person, and hear about these encounters myself.
Yeah, I mean, I can, I own the property, so I mean, I can take you to where these even happened, and can kind of show you, can kind of get an idea of, like the 8-foot creek it jumped. I can take you right there and show you where it was sitting at, and where you kind of get an idea for for that. if you want to do that, I'm, more than happy to take you down there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's set up a date and time. We'll meet up and go down there, and maybe we'll experience something.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I'll keep in contact with you, and we'll try to set something up here in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, William. Thank you so much, and you have a great day. All right, William, thank you once again for sharing your Bigfoot encounter from Pike County, Missouri, off of the Mississippi River. And like I said before, I have heard many encounters off the Mississippi River, whether it's east or west of the river in Missouri or Illinois. And I have also heard many reports from the Bowling Green area in Missouri. Believe it or not, these creatures are in St. Louis County, and they're not just found in the Mark Twain National Forest. William, I can't imagine how you felt like whenever you saw this creature jump up 8 feet into the air and take off into the forest. I'm sure it blew your mind, and whenever you saw the creature's eyes, you knew without a doubt what it truly was. You would think these creatures would only be in the Pacific Northwest, Canada, and even Alaska, but believe it or not, these creatures are found in Missouri, and it's not just the southern part of Missouri in the Mark Twain National Forest. They are in St. Louis County, believe it or not. There are a lot of big hills in that area and a lot of big woods, and the biggest buck that was found dead in Missouri was in St. Louis County, and they have it in Bass Pro. So believe it or not, these things are in this area. Believe me, it blows my mind too, but I hear report after report off of the Mississippi River, and all the rivers in Missouri pour into the Mississippi, and I believe it is one of the major travel routes for these cryptid creatures. Guys, I've been struggling to keep up with the channel lately. There are so many people to contact, and I've done a ton of interviews in the past, and I have a giant folder on my computer of people who are waiting for their encounters to be released on the podcast. So if you contact me in the future, just know it might take some time, so I appreciate your patience, but just know that your encounter will be released on the channel in the future. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter that you would like to share with me here on Sasquatch Theory, please get in touch with me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you guys can, add me on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and many other platforms. I appreciate each and every one of you for listening to the channel and for all the support that you have shown. You guys take care and be safe out there in the forest.